Hey, welcome everybody. We are having another one of our Tuesday and Thursdays live streams with fascinating people and talking technology, talking sports, and just a lot of different fun things. Just want to mention a couple things up front. We are powering this with Melon, which is a fantastic product where you don't need to download anything and it just works in the browser for streaming content. We're also powered by ourselves with Speedify, and we are joined by Alex, who is our CEO, and Natalie Egenolf, who is from everything, and specifically a few different things. And with Speedify, I just also want to mention that up in the top left corner for you, there's a code that you can use for a discount, and we'll see you with the product. I also want to mention that you can drop us a question or a line or anything you want in the chat, and that's go for it. So anyway, Natalie, first of all, welcome.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for being here.
And Alex, welcome to your own thing with
thank you,
the company. Alex, do you just want to say a little bit more that is better about Speedify? That's a little more
sure
technical.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, right? So Speedify is our app that you run in the background on Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, whatever you got, and it lets your computer use all your internet connections at the same time, so that you get more reliable streams. Right? So you can be on the Wi-Fi, but you can also tether your cell phone. If something happens to your Wi-Fi, you don't get cut off. You just switch to your cell phone, and all the apps just keep going. You stay live the whole time. It helps. Live streaming. It also helps. Any kind of Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, any of those, live stream type apps. They all work better.
Basically everything that we kind of need to survive these days.
I was just going to say it's brilliant in the time of a pandemic.
Yeah. So a lot of people working from home, working a lot better, right?
Yeah.
So Natalie, you've done a lot in your life through computers and interacting with people and building your own following online and offline. I just wanted to ask a little bit about what you're doing now and after the Mike Missinelli show, and then I've got a lot of questions about General Knowledge Wednesday and a lot of like the fun things from your whole career. But do you want to just start us off with where you're at right now?
Yeah, so actually I just took a role with Parks Sportsbook through Parks Interactive, which is backed by Parks Casino, the #1 casino in Pennsylvania. So essentially what I'm doing now is taking the sports media to the internet world. I realized over the last year in particular with the pandemic how, you're seeing a need for something like Speedify and how everything is kind of converting to virtual, right? So pandemic happens and sports stopped. And when sports stopped, the network suffered. So essentially what I saw what happened was that the online gambling space kind of came in and was basically not single-handedly, but a lot of traditional advertisers pulled from radio, from television. Networks laid off hundreds of employees. Some networks ceased to exist. A lot of networks scaled back, now are operating on bare bone crews. And what I kind of saw happen was online gambling, since it was the only thing to do essentially when sports could come back, if you could go to the game, it was another way to enjoy the game, right? So with that in mind, you have people like you have companies like FanDuel and DraftKings and Barstool Sportsbook, BetMGM, we're all competing in this one digital space, right? Because all the lines are all the same pretty much everywhere, right? It's pretty much a stagnant product, but Parks brought me on because of my my history in traditional media, my career, and my experience in traditional media, and bringing that experience into an online space through the sports gambling world. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm helping them strategize a way to come up with original digital content that's not just gambling focused, right? We're going to have, first it's me, Dee Lynam, and Samantha Wilson. Dee Lynam, 25 years reporting the Sixers in Philadelphia. Sam Wilson covering baseball for us. So essentially what we're trying to do is create our own network of traditional sports programming, but in a digital space, which is where everything's going now. So for me personally, like you were saying, building my own brand, the way that I was able to kind of connect with people over the years was through my social media. I started in sports talk radio when I was 19 years old. I was a baby. I worked for WIP as their receptionist and in their promotions team while I was in college. That's kind of how I got my foot in the door. And that was the dawn of Twitter. So I kind of followed, and I know that this is probably controversial, but I kind of followed the Kim Kardashian model, and I saw that she was marketing to her followers with brands. So instead of doing, I didn't have any brands, I didn't have cupcakes or anything like that. Like that's how she started. But I noticed how she was kind of building these brands using her influence. So I saw an opportunity for me to do that with my positions with the stations that I was working for. So first it was WIP, 94 WISP, which no longer exists, greatest rock station in the history of Philadelphia. You know, I would be out at events and I'd tweet out where I was. And essentially it also helped build my personality on the air, because when you start out on radio, it's very, very, very tiny minutes you get. So I started out on Angelo Cataldi in the WIP morning show in 2011. I had a 10-minute segment on there, but Twitter became an extension of my thoughts on sports and to kind of generate the conversation. So I saw how important it was to do that for myself. And that's essentially how I built my own personal brand there, and then becoming more valuable to the stations that I worked for. You know, also that's not the only reason. You know, I took many jobs throughout my career. I worked for NBC Sports Regional, did a lot of freelance TV work, Phillies Nation TV, the 700 level show, great sports debate back in the day, kind of just to build my resume in the traditional media. And I feel as though over the last year, now we're really seeing the convergence of two. And that's how I ended up here with Parks. And it just seemed like such a natural next step for me in my career in the sports media, because this is, I think, where the sports media is going. And now we're learning that the pandemic's not going anywhere, right? So our lives are going to be half virtual, I feel, and half in person, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Yeah.
You know, for the foreseeable future, if not forever, because this is the way that things are now. We can't change that, right? We're trying to combat the virus, but it's not going anywhere. We kind of thought last year, oh, there's no way. I remember thinking, there's no way this can last more than a month, you know, and then here we are, it's August of 2021. And we're seeing mass restrictions again, and there's a variant, and you know, this is the world that we're entering into, and it just seemed like the logical next step for me in my career.
Yeah.
One
of the things that I've always found pretty interesting about your kind of social media presence is how deftly you kind of have to swat away insults and things like that, and where you wouldn't have the freedom to do that on air on the radio. But it also feels like you're kind of creating a bit of space for some people to follow you, because there's not the path that you have that just another white guy is going to have in this industry. But if you were starting out all over again, but now, like, how do you think streaming might play into how you would build that brand, or how would you think about using it, especially getting started?
Well, you know, what's so funny is I think about the tools that, you know, aspiring broadcasters or aspiring in any field have right now, right? You can do it all by yourself. Back in 2009, when I started, I had a BlackBerry, you know, and there was no real streaming options or anything like that. So if I were starting now, I would have my own thing. I would start my own thing today and have that be, you know, what I built my career on, because you don't necessarily need the traditional networks anymore to be successful. You have to have, you know, personality and a work ethic and, you know, dedication. And, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Things take time overnight. But if I were starting out now, I would utilize the internet for everything possible just to build myself up as a personality and as a brand. Because this is where it is, right? I just saw an interview today. They were saying the Met Gala is influencers now. It's not celebrities anymore. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking celebrities were the original influencers, but they were on paper. Now everybody is on the internet. Nobody has the paper anymore. So it's just really watching, the tides change and everything's virtual. So I would tell anybody, like podcasts, video, and getting reps is important, right? That's the only way that you get good at something is when you do it over and over and over again. There's a Malcolm Gladwell, I think, 10,000 hours it takes to become an expert at something. And that's not a lie. I wasn't very good when I started, but just practice and repetition. And 10 years later, here I am in this new role, having done basically everything that I ever dreamed of in my career. And it was, it just takes time. And that's what I would tell people now. Start it, do it over and over and over again. And you have to be patient.
Yeah, kind of how you first came on my radar and the show did. When baseball came back, I was working remotely. And I just wish, honestly, that I had Speedify at the time because our work calls would always drop and everything was freezing constantly.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen after I downloaded Speedify. But I was at that stage and just wanting something to look at of sports. And then baseball came back. And so I would have the channel on the Phillies game, and then I would turn off the TV. And when I would turn it back on, it just happened to always be you guys and the broadcast. But now I kind of think about it in a lot of ways of that still is kind of how a brand has to be built a little bit. Like you've got to see somebody over and over, but we can't own all of the TV airwaves. So it's got to be social media where that type of thing happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Alex, you have a question?
So what do you think about, live streaming versus podcasting? I know with Lipstick League, you're like doing both. How do you feel?
So I love live streaming. However, sometimes it's nice to not be on camera. I do like there is a little bit of, it's a level of pressure that's really hard to explain. So having done traditional radio for all those years and then having done a radio simulcast, which was essentially a live stream of our radio show, right? That was what it was supposed to be. We weren't scripted, directed. There was nobody telling us what to talk about, what to do. Mike hit that microphone every day at 2:00 and we just went. And what you saw was live and not planned. And so there's a level of, added pressure. Again, it's hard to explain when there's a camera on you, but the benefits, like I said, outweigh it because when people see your face, they feel like they get to know you, right? They feel like they know you as a person when you're face to face with them rather than hearing your voice. Because I would go out and people say, "Oh, I recognize your voice from somewhere," but once people recognize my face, it was game over. It was wild just to have that happen. And again, people feel like they know you when they see you and they listen to you and they talk to you. It's very much a marriage. The live stream just takes things, I think, totally to a next level. Right.
So speaking of which, we are live. So you guys can post questions and we actually can see them. So I see some people have been posting and I haven't been watching up until now. So if anyone has questions for Natalie, just go ahead and post them on, the YouTube or wherever you're watching, and we should see them. And Lipstick League, your podcast, your video stream, that's all still happening, right?
Oh yeah.
You're not losing that with Parks or?
No. I'm this is just kind of what I'm, where I'm at full time right now. But yeah, my podcast is still happening and I'm still, that's still kicking. That's a passion project that Nicole and I kind of came up with together. And we love it. It's traditional sports talk radio is very set in its ways in the format and how they decide to do things. So, people can talk about sports, and just because it doesn't sound like sports talk, traditional sports talk in the traditional sports talk format doesn't mean that it's incorrect, right? It's just different. And that's the thing. There's a comfortability in sports talk radio for it to be the same baseline, I think. That's what I've learned. And yeah, Nicole and I were just like, there's no space where we can listen to anything that sounds like her and I when we want to talk about the Sixers or when we want to talk about the Eagles. And, you know, sports isn't just linear anywhere where it's just the games. The sports are, it's blended with pop culture, right? You can't get away from it. Ben Simmons dates a Kardashian, or dated a Kardashian, no longer together. You know, so we just thought that it was a perfect place to kind of marry those two parts of culture. In addition to that, and also because of, like you said, you know, how toxic the online space can be, we're trying to promote positivity, right, and good vibes, because, and in my experience in sports talk radio, as the only woman in many, many rooms for a lot of years, I was always treated a lot differently than my male counterparts, regardless of my experience or anything that was on my resume. People tend to, when I get criticized, it's not just your opinion's dumb or we don't like your opinion. It's personal attacks, it's insults, it's my appearance, it's my weight. It could be anything, right? It's different for women than it is for men. So we just kind of wanted to have a place where women could feel comfortable, because it doesn't necessarily, it exists now. It's getting better, right? It's getting better. It's gotten better over the last, I'd say 5 years even, but it's still not enough. So that was the thinking when we launched the Lipstick League, was just to have a positive place, a fun place to talk about sports and talk about pop culture and hang out and just really just be ourselves and make it fun and not have it feel so exclusive. That was our goal.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I really like about working with Speedify and kind of stepping into the streaming space, is that it almost feels like a throwback to some of the earlier days of the internet, when before it got as toxic. And that toxicity is still out there, but now a grandma who wants to stream about knitting can just do it. And so there's kind of like, it's a little bit of a refreshing sort of aspect to it that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I need to find a knitting stream. I would love to know how to learn how to knit. I would totally watch a grandma streaming knitting lessons for sure.
Yeah, and that's also kind of the fascinating piece, is that you get to find your audience wherever. And I probably wouldn't have predicted about you that you would want to watch a streaming about somebody knitting, but like everybody has those kind of quirks or things that they are interested in that they can find. And yeah.
Well, and that's the beauty of the internet, right? And that's why streaming makes things so accessible, because nothing's off limits, right? And you know, when I was doing some more in-depth research on social media platforms, speaking of knitting, there is a specific social media site just dedicated to knitters.
That's
where
awesome.
You go and you sign up and you just join this knitting social media world. But they also, I think that they have live streams. I'm not on there, but I just found it and I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And that's what makes streaming great, is because, again, the world is your oyster. You can find anything at any time, anywhere.
Yeah.
It's that long tail, right? Whatever your interest is, you can find the 30 other people who are into it.
Yeah.
Or, 7 billion people in the world. There's probably 3,000 people into anything you can think of, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what, Reddit makes you realize.
Good and bad, right?
Yeah. I'm like, whoa.
Reddit always surprises me with just how insane it can get so quickly.
Yeah.
Reddit,
I'm kind of new to Reddit, but it's my new, when I need a break from Twitter, because Twitter can be exhausting, especially when you say something and it doesn't land and then you get killed for like 5 years. And I try and make jokes about it. People can be really harsh, but no, so Reddit is like my safe space where I go to just mindlessly scroll and internalize,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have like a bone to pick about, like, I got very annoyed by the reaction to a post that you made about people who have hard opinions about Philadelphia but aren't necessarily from here. And like, it was it was pretty obvious what you were saying was you're not allowed legally to be a fan unless you live within city limits. It was a lot more about people who aren't fully invested in the city itself, but want to dictate things to the city. And it felt like a very bad faith thing that a lot of people kind of purposely misread that. So
well,
that was
and
annoying to me.
and then here's the difference, right? I say something like that, which honestly, I was totally joking. And my sense of humor, I forget, right? Because I'm always myself on my Twitter. It's always me tweeting and just, goofing off and making bad jokes because that's what I like to do. And honestly, I like to lean into topics sometimes just to kind of drive the point home. So that's what I was trying to do by making that joke, but it didn't land. And again, I think it's easy. People love to drag other people on Twitter. So, but also I feel like if you're intelligent, then you would have known what I meant. And so the people who decided to drag me clearly just had a vendetta. I also feel like sometimes Twitter is super emotional. So that was right after the Phillies won that game. So everybody was like all emotional, and then they're on their phones and then they see something and they don't know where to go with their emotions. So they just like rip somebody or, however it goes.
It's really clear that a lot of people use Twitter to get upset about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they want to get upset about something, so they get on Twitter.
Yeah. And the thing was, it was all over grass, right? Like I was generally posting a picture. I was excited. I was leaving a friend's house. The Phillies had won. And it all started, sometimes being on there and being so accessible to people, it can eat at your soul a little bit because I am seeing everything that people are saying to me, which is why the block button is very useful. I know people get all upset when they block, when you get blocked, but just, don't be mean or rude or, antagonize somebody and you won't get blocked. It's not that difficult. But yeah, so it's, I just read something in my Instagram messages where somebody called me, I think, fat and with an expletive. And, I saw that, I got upset, and I go on my Twitter and all these people are ripping me about grass. And I'm just like, chill out, like we need to chill out. So, I tried to lean into it a little bit, but I'm still getting heat from it, but whatever. They'll get over it. There'll be somebody else to rip next week.
And also like, there is grass that comes through our sidewalks at some point. Like, I don't even know why that would.
It was really strange. That's why I was like, have you ever even been to Philadelphia?
Right.
Grass, it grows. It's sometimes, I don't know. The city has bigger fish to fry right now than making sure that like the blocks are like neatly kept, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, no, Twitter, it can be, I love it because I love interacting with people for, it's fun for me because I'm like, these are the people that I feel like I would get along with, right? We all share a common interest. We all love sports, and most of us love Philadelphia sports. So I'm like, you could probably be my friend. But then next thing it's, it could just go completely awry, and then I stay off for a little bit.
Yeah. And so I actually am not Philly born and raised, but I'm as hardcore of a Philly fan as it gets. But
yeah,
because as soon as I kind of stepped foot in the city, I was like, this isn't totally positive, and I love it. This is right where I'm at. But like, you really have to kind of embrace the good with the not as good, because it's all a part of the same city. Like,
right. And my whole thing is, and I've been actively trying to poach Cowboys fans for years. So when anybody says that I'm like,
because you're so kind,
that's totally not true. I've been actively trying to poach Cowboys fans or Giants fans, anybody in the NFC East. I'm like, there's always room on the Eagles wagon. So, and of course, like, we're represented around the world, which is amazing. Mikey Miss was in Italy and was at a restaurant the one time, and the waiter, who was Italian, talked to him about Donovan McNabb in the Super Bowl. So it's Philadelphia fandom, and I think we're the center of the universe, right? So it's global and it's amazing. So anybody who knows me knows that I would never gatekeep that. Like, it's so dumb because it's not even remotely close to true.
Right.
But yeah, no, and you gotta love the good with the bad. And I just, sometimes I have a little bit of a Philly chip on my shoulder because I am born and raised here, and I get defensive, and I'm like, well, you know what, then maybe you should pay attention to the city a little bit more and see what's going on here. You love the teams. So, but that's just the Philly in me. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about some of those teams a little bit. I almost like, I feel almost mixed about bringing it up because I don't really know what to think about this season. But how are you feeling about training camp and the prospects for this year for the Birds?
I see. I don't love the preseason. It makes me anxious for injuries.
Yeah.
Also, I've had a tough time trying to come to a decision for myself. I'm very indecisive sometimes on how I feel about the team because this team is brand new.
Yeah.
There's very few familiar faces left, and we don't even know the head coach. We barely really know Jalen Hurts. So it's hard for me to make an assessment based on A, the preseason, and B, training camp, right? Because, you saw that Jalen Reagor catch went viral today, one-handed. That's amazing. But, when you have an opposing NFL defense, maybe one of the best in the league.
A little different.
It's a little different, and he's under triple coverage. It's how is he going to make those catches, right? So it's tough for me to say. I always want to be optimistic about the team, especially about the Eagles, but I'm still a little miffed at Howie Roseman about how the last, couple years have played out. But I'm saying 7 wins just for my own mental sanity, because I've also learned as a Philadelphia sports fan over the years and trying to cover things objectively, right? That's the thing. A lot of people don't like my opinion sometimes, but I'm like, I have to call it like I see it. And the one thing about me is I always keep it real. So I try to be as objective as possible just to protect myself and to protect the fan base, right? Because you go in with sky high expectations, more likely than not, you're going to be let down, because how many Super Bowls have the Eagles won at one, right?
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, I'd always be Super Bowl or bust, and I am sometimes, but then I have to coax myself back. And I think, okay, realistically, with what where do you stand? So I feel like 7 is fair right now. And again, because it's so new, right? It's a new team. It's a new quarterback. Everybody's new. And that's the thing. I can't even make an assessment and say, 10 wins, because we've never, ever seen anything close to this team before. Last year's team, totally different.
Yeah, I'm struggling with it a little bit because you hear about kind of the up and downs of Jalen Hurts in practice and some throws that he misses and kind of chronically, but he seems like such a perfect guy for this team.
Absolutely.
Just the perfect leader. And I just wish, like, if we could just gift him any more like precision while passing, then I think we've got like our perfect dude. But
yeah, his mobility is what kind of makes, I love his mobility. He's fast. He kind of has that like Vic-esque style about him. But like you said, his passing and whatnot is what's going to be telling. And also I'm intrigued to see how he is when he can't run the ball, when he gets outside the pocket. That's what's going to be telling. And I feel like with Carson, we knew that we had that vertical threat, right? That he could, drop a 75-yard bomb to Alshon in the end zone, but that's not something we can bank on with him. So that's where, I know that our offense has improved with Devontae Smith and whatnot. That's one weapon though, right? And again, I think that sometimes we forget that while the Eagles are training in the offseason, so is every other team in the NFL. And they're trying to get better. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that, which is where my 7 wins comes in, because I'm trying to be realistic about not only where we stand, but where other teams stand in the league as well.
Yeah. Daniel from the chat said, if Flacco is the QB, it's going to be a very up and down season. But I think if Flacco's the QB, we're in a lot of trouble.
I just can't see that happening, especially at this point. And especially because I think the organization knows that, I've said it over and over and over again, that the equivalency to hell is a perpetual quarterback controversy. And essentially that's where Philadelphia has been, I feel like, forever. And even when we thought we had our franchise quarterback, next thing you know, they draft Jalen Hurts, and this is nothing against him, but they draft him. And then Carson's out in 1 year. It's very interesting. And there's, Jalen Hurts doesn't deserve that, right? He's really, like you said, stepping up, taking that leadership role, and he's putting in the work. And he has all these great analogies and poems, which I'm just thrilled about this year, because that makes press conference watching more enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jalen doesn't necessarily deserve that for Flacco, who's maybe trying to make a last ditch effort at greatness. And it's nothing against Flacco, but if you want this young team to continue to progress, you need to have consistency. And in my mind, it probably should be with somebody like Jalen Hurts, because then they can grow together. I think about, not that it's the same, but I think about, the 08 Phillies and how that group, it took them a couple years to kind of find that flow and find that chemistry that turned them into the 08 Phillies, and I think that the reps and the relationships also factor so much into how a team does outside of the X's and O's. Yeah. So I'm just hoping that Jalen's the guy.
I'm kind of the same way about press conferences and that type of thing. It's such a nightmare of giving 110% and just taking it one game at a time and all of these things. And it seems like Jalen is a lot more thoughtful about actually saying something that makes sense.
He's poetic. I'm waiting for him to have like a haiku.
I would love to see all of the starters kind of compete against haikus and see who, first of all, knows what a haiku is at all. And then second of all, can create one. Yeah,
like the 575. I've written that's elite joke. I've written sports haikus before. I had like a running thing on Twitter, actually. Maybe I should bring it back this year.
Yeah, that would be good. I remember those. Those are good.
Mike and Ty were like, no, more poems. I'm like, poems.
I bet a lot more of them are more lyrical than you might expect, right? Some of them are pretty smart.
People get really creative.
Yeah. We know Kelsey has a way with words. We get some good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is even more emotionally distressing to me, but how are we feeling about the Sixers and the offseason and one of the guards that they might have drafted number one that has been conversed about lately? How are we feeling?
Oh my goodness. The Sixers are tough. I mean, I'm over the moon with the Embiid move today. And what's interesting, and, I talked to Dee Lynam on Park Sportsbook earlier today, and she, pointed out how there was a period of time when Joel was injured, right? And it was, this team's going to be built around Ben. Well, I think what we saw today is this team's going to be now built around Joel, basically because we've learned that Ben necessarily might not want to be here. However, that might not be in his control. He might end up back here. And I'm intrigued to see how that plays out. And it's sad, right? I said it's probably, for me, looking back on Philadelphia sports history, one of the biggest tragedies in Philadelphia sports, I think. And people were saying, Eric Lindros and Carson Wentz, but we got to see Carson's potential, right? 2017, we got to see him win 11 games and take that team, and we saw him play at his highest potential. Lindros was out of the game because of concussions and just a general decline in career. We got to see him at his best. And then somebody else said Pelly Lindbergh, and I said this, not like a tragedy like that. But when it comes to Ben, there was not any player in Philadelphia sports history who had the ceiling as high as he did and the potential for like superstardom. And superstardom, right, in the NBA is world. It's you're known around the world, right?
Yeah.
Think about somebody like in Major League Baseball, who's the biggest star, like Mike Trout, right? Do you think Mike Trout could go to, I don't know, Guam and people would know who he is? No, but everybody would probably know LeBron, right? So the fact that we had that caliber of a player and we still saw it, right? Defensively, his statistics were insane. He's so incredible on that side of the court, but offensively, we were being patient, but it comes down to it when you're in the playoffs and your back's against the wall, you have to shoot the ball, right? The patience
I mean,
is an important thing.
foul shots, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my 17-year-old son would beat him in a foul shot contest. I don't understand. That shouldn't be a thing.
No, and it's to me, I don't even like to rip him because it's just sad to me because it's something. It's clearly something that he hasn't been able to pinpoint why. It's and seeing those mental blocks, I think in athletes is worse sometimes than seeing like a physical block, right? Your arm's going to get better if it's broken.
Yeah.
If you get that surgery, you can get it back to full strength with physical therapy. But when it's something, if it's in your head and you can't unlock that and work past it, that can be a barrier to years of success. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing because a couple of years ago, he was putting up points. It wasn't a lot, but even you think those 15, 16 points this year would have made such a difference in the playoffs, against the Hawks. It's tough. It makes me sad. I'm intrigued to see how this plays out. And I hope that if he does come back, he'll be able to, figure it out. But I'm happy about Joe. He's our baby.
Yeah. I may or may not have gotten into an argument with somebody who's currently in the chat about how like it is great that Ben is able to be a defensive player of the year candidate and probably should have won, I think, and able to put up triple doubles. But like the thing that the game only counts like is measured on is points that go in the basket.
Yeah.
Like that's literally the only thing you have to do to win is get more of them. And at the end of the day, like we're gonna need him to score. But.
Yeah. That's what basketball is.
Yeah.
Put the ball in the net. It's a very simple concept. And then I often wonder do we set the expectation too high for certain athletes? But it's not that he didn't come in with any fanfare. I mean, there was a Showtime documentary about his life before he even got to Philadelphia. So it's hard. It's hard. And I've been through it for 32 years living here. And I feel like I've seen it all. And the Ben thing it breaks my heart. It does.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I almost hate having too personal of an opinion about players because like, what the hell do I really know about like why Joel is in shape or not or something? But it does seem like there's a humility factor that either will or won't be there with Ben of like just being surrounded by your family and everything you've done so far has gotten you here. So maybe be a part of the team when they tell you they want this off-season workout or like, I mean, I think not an understanding. I don't think that things have to be like radically different if you're going to get different results.
Right. And I often think, sometimes with superstar athletes and even somebody like Markelle Fultz with his, thoracic outlet syndrome, when you're told you're great your entire life, I can't imagine what it must be like to try and, tone that down, especially when you do have the goods to back it up, but you kind of don't, right? It's this weird dynamic. And I think that that's what we're seeing play out with Ben when it comes to him not maybe being the best teammate, right? It's because he's like, well, I'm good. I had a Showtime documentary made about me 6 years ago. So I think it's probably just a lot of his upbringing and, how he's letting that play out.
Yeah. Daniel asked in the chat, do you think the contract for Ben is scaring teams away?
Yeah. Yeah. And also the Sixers aren't just going to give him up for anything, right? Because he does, that's what's so frustrating about him. He's the most polarizing player, I think, in the NBA because he does have so much upside. And it's one thing. It's a huge thing. It's not even like it's a minor thing. It's a huge thing. That's the barrier to his total success. So it's like, do the Sixers, it's a gamble, right? Do they gamble that away? And in Philadelphia sports history, we've seen players go on and flourish elsewhere, which is the most painful thing in the entire world. And it's like, what if that happens, right? So the Sixers aren't just going to give him away. There's a reason why Daryl Morey's asking, when they were talking to the Warriors, I saw a joke. It was like, he's asking for the Golden Gate Bridge and, lifetime supply of rice-a-roni. Like there's a reason why that is. So and because he's such an unknown.
Yeah.
What I can see happening is a team who needs that defensively coming in, but are they going to give up offensively what the Sixers want? No,
Yeah.
because they're not going to get that in return.
I think, yeah, with this upcoming season, especially the way that Joel conditioned himself and came in aggressive to the start of this past season. I'm really excited to see how he kind of approaches the next season, but I have no doubt that he's going to be all out for a championship and in the best shape he's ever been in. But I know this player doesn't fill that hole if Ben is gone, but just seeing like the rise of Tyrese Maxey has been amazing. But what do you think like about his long-term potential?
Oh, Maxey, he has been such a treat to watch, right? And, knowing what I know about him off the court and his personality, and I feel like he's so genuinely happy to be in Philadelphia. He's so genuinely happy to be playing in the NBA. It's and watching that joy kind of play out like we did and watching him play at such a high level, it's the best, I think, decision that the Sixers had made in a really long time was taking him. And I'm so excited to see him. I see that's the thing. I don't want to give him up, right? I don't want to see him go because I feel like the glimpse that we saw of him this season, there's way more of that to come because he's already in that rhythm, right? It's like Ben never found that rhythm to be in. He's out of his mind on defense, a couple triple doubles here and there. I mean, a lot of triple doubles, honestly, but it's like Maxey that first year just coming in and firing away. It was so special to watch.
Yeah, I watched a couple of summer league games. I don't know if you guys are paying any attention. And Maxey is the team leader. And it's really exciting to see him not coming off the bench, but he's clearly like, the team leader. And it's cool. I've enjoyed a couple of summer league games.
Yeah,
never happened before.
No, he wants to be the guy, and that's the thing. You could see the joy when he plays. He's fun to watch because that he's enjoying when he's playing at such a high level. And it's just, again, it's like some sort of energy, I think, that kind of flows and he's got it. I mean, he definitely has the energy and he has the talent and the skills, I think, to really make an impact for the Sixers. And I'm excited to see him next year. He's one of the highlights, I think, of what we have this upcoming season.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing in the chat. And first of all, everybody in the chat, everybody's logging on. Follow at Speedify on Twitter, on Instagram, every way you can possibly get any update about us. Sign up for it. And then, Natalie, how can people get a hold of you?
Just at Natalie Egenolf everywhere. It's just my name, Egenolf. That's how you spell my last name. Natalie is Natalie, Natalie. There's no Y or anything special. So I'm just at Natalie Egenolf everywhere. Twitter, Instagram. I try not to use Facebook. It scares me. But I'm on there too.
So Kane 7161 said, "Let's not let Philly kill Maxey. Every 76er rookie we boost this highly wins Rookie of the Year and busts out. I love his progress, but I hate to see the city turn when he shows a learning curve." That's what do we think about kind of the way the city treats young stars like Maxey?
I think that's a really valid point. And I've, again, with the whole Ben thing, there was a patience factor there. I think the city was kind of patient with him, and now it's like we've totally run out of patience. But I hope that it's the case that because of what we've seen from Maxey, and we know that that's his potential, and again, he's so young, right? That he still has so much learning and so much growing to do as a player, especially in the NBA, that I think that he would get as much patience too, because he's come in, he embraced the city, he's embraced the fan base, and it's in Philly, it's just so tough, right? Because when they feel like you're not trying, that's when they're out on you. I've seen it time and time again. It's when they feel like the player isn't trying anymore or trying to be good. And I think that Maxey's attitude lends itself to people understanding that if he does hit a slump or for whatever reason, I think his effort will always kind of be evident. So I'm hoping. I mean, Philly's a tough town to play in. It can make or break you, and we've seen it break so many people over the years. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's part of the passion. And that's why some athletes it's the greatest city to play in. And then some athletes it's the worst city to play in. I think it's personal perspective on the pressure, right? And the pressure that you put on yourself to perform. But I think he'll be all right.
I don't want to take up forever of your time, but I do want to ask a little bit about the Phillies and kind of going back into the way the city treats players and vice versa. Can you help me? I don't know how to feel about Bryce.
Okay.
I am like all in on Bryce, but I also sort of feel like I'm a sucker because he's so blatantly pandering, but also it's kind of sweet and it works on me. Like, should I be all in on Bryce?
At this point, yeah. I mean, I was all in once they spent that money because I was like, they just spent that money. Now I have to be all in. And he knows that he has to be all in. So that's where I think that comes together, right? That's why I think you're seeing the Fanatic lined suit and why you're seeing him wearing the clear water shirts and stuff like that. He knows that he has to be all in because he's not going anywhere, right? And we are literally banking on him to take this team to the next level. This is the first year where I felt most comfortable with him since he's been with the Phillies. I mean, we're seeing, MVP caliber, bats from him and just, I love his aggressive play on the bases. He's never afraid to like take that risk. Some people don't like it. It scares some people. I love that aggression, especially in a baseball player. And I think that he's it for us, right? They're kind of putting the pieces around him now. And like I said, that chemistry, right? I can see the chemistry with this team. They're starting to get some things go their way that I think prior they wouldn't have. So I'm excited. And I think that you should, there's a reason for optimism here with the Phillies because we're seeing the upswing and there's nothing better than an upswing in August.
Yeah.
As opposed to starting the year at 500 and then falling off after the All-Star break. We're seeing the opposite, which is something that we haven't seen in a really, really long time.
Yeah. I've always been kind of interested in like how players step up and who are the leaders in the locker room and what does that mean? Like, and of course, like I just have always been all in on like Malcolm Jenkins, like what he meant to that team.
Yeah.
And like with Bryce or with any of these players, you could be such a jackass if like you determine that you're the leader and multiple people are competing for this, or it can go badly differently. But I think it's kind of interesting that Bryce not only has the wealth that came from that contract and is good at playing baseball, and we need that, but he also is kind of like with calling the draft picks as soon as they were drafted by the Phillies, like that. His kind of comfort at not overstepping, I don't think, but like stepping into fully that leadership role has been pretty cool to see.
That's what we signed him for as well, right? We needed that guy who's been around the league for a minute, who's had success in the league. And the Phillies haven't had that in a really long time. I feel like, they tried to anoint Rhys Hoskins the leader, but he's still trying to figure out his swing again at this point now, and kind of going through the Gabe Kapler era, which was an interesting point of Phillies history. They've been trying to find their identity, I think, and that's what I think we're seeing. And along with the team identity is a leader. And Bryce is stepping up because it's naturally evolving, right? It's not one person trying to rally the troops. And we're not hearing about people, playing video games during the game,
Right.
and stuff like that. I think the team was struggling for an identity for a little bit, and Bryce has given that to them, as well as naturally leading the younger guys on the team. And I think it's going to be a fun rest of the season.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that they have the talent and need to put it together to be a kind of top tier contender, or does that require a much different off season?
It's hard, right? Because I feel like we're seeing better play and we're seeing better pitching. I don't love that Matt Moore has a great night and then Zach Wheeler has an off night. We need that consistency. And again, my baseline for judgment of any baseball team is that 2008 Phillies team, because that was perfection, right? And you saw every single player on that team come out night after night after night and perform at the highest level possible, whether it was, pitching, bats, outfield, like all of it. I look at this team now and I say that they're like the 2007 Phillies. They're not 2000. Like, you could see pieces starting to fall into place, and you can see where the strengths are, right? And this offseason, I think, is going to be filling out those gaps that are missing, where we already have solid identified strengths. So I think that's when the team will totally come together. And I'm expecting next year to kind of be that year where they really make a run. Although, however, you never know. I think that they're much better than they were last year. I haven't been as optimistic about them in the last 10 years. So I feel like that says a lot. And I think next year is going to be the year where we're going to get the Phillies team that we've been hoping for. And this year's a great start, but again, it's a start. So next year, I think we're really going to get to see how everything is going to fall together.
Yeah. So I've got kind of a couple questions to maybe end on, but I just want to kind of pop these out there. Like, what's one thing in Philadelphia sports that you're most happy about or excited about right now?
It's a really great question.
Thank you.
Devontae Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't wait to see him play. I did Mark Farzetta show the other day, and I was saying how I watch his highlight reels, and just his speed and his able to, bust out of triple coverage and still make miraculous catches. I think that we are in for such a treat with him, as long as he can stay healthy. And his size is against him a little. He has like the lowest BMI of all wide receivers in the NFL. But as long as he can break out and he can get, run those routes and get where he needs to go, I'm really excited about his future here. I'm just thankful. Like, I've been praying for a wide receiver. Next, we'll get a cornerback. I mean, it's a little bit better, but I've been praying for a wide receiver and a cornerback for years. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, it would be great if we had one of those like third or fourth round picks at corner that just surprises the hell out of us and becomes a shutdown one for us.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've just consistently get burnt deep and on the outside downfield like forever. And I'm sick of kind of seeing that happen. And I'm like, you don't have anybody on the right side. We don't have a corner on the right side who kind of can make those plays that we need to, like, keep up with the receivers. So, I mean, we'll see. But yeah, Devontae Smith I'm so looking forward to him.
No, I don't know how our current defensive coordinator is going to do, but the Jim Schwartz mentality of like, great points, Natalie. I'm going to put Nate Gary on Chase Claypool. Like, it just, we make terrible decisions also with what we have. And it's so, what was interesting too, last year, I think about the Eagles and their decision making a lot. I actually think about it a lot. And what's interesting is how we're watching, baseball kind of has that analytical approach. And then we learned that the Eagles last year kind of took that analytical approach when it came to making decisions on the field. And I'm hoping that they learned from that last year and that they're not going to do that again this year, because we didn't know until after the fact how much it had actually impacted the game until after the season. Because, you're thinking over and over and over again, well, Carson's best outside of the pocket. Why aren't you rolling him out? And here we learned it's because it's the analytics guy who's making the play, like calling the plays. And it's like, wait, what? So I'm hoping that there's a space for analytics, right? But then there's a space for football and people who understand football and the actual people who play football and have studied it. I'd like to think that the person who's making the decisions for the play calling is smarter and is the one on the field on the sideline, because they're the one who knows the team the best. So I'm just hoping that they don't rely on that as much, because that was shocking to me when I learned that last year, that they were relying on the analytics guy. It also feels kind of weird because, like, clearly that would have to be pressed upon Doug Peterson, because it's not like there's a different coach and that's their way of doing it. Like we had Doug already before that.
Yeah.
And we had crazy Doug who, just fourth and whatever, let's go for it. I don't care. Like that was the most exciting era of football that we've ever had from this team.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't know what happened. I have an idea what happened, but they have to fix it. And this is the last chance that Howie Roseman has to fix it, I think, is this year, because the fan base just deserves better, right? It's not even about like anything else other than it's all about the fans, and it always should be. And they deserve better than what they got last year. And they're the ones who are attending every game. And that's what this is all about. And sometimes I think the organizations lose focus of that because they focus on themselves and their jobs, when it's like, no, you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for 65,000 people who are sitting in those seats every single Sunday. So they owe it to the fans this year to just be better overall on the field and off the field and in their decision making, because last year was intolerable, and the organization was mind-blowing. I've never seen anything like it in, again, I've been in Philly 32 years. I started watching sports when I was like 3. And just watching what happened last year was so insane, and they need to wise up, and it better be quick.
Yeah. I'm not against coaches or things when it doesn't, work out. Like one team loses every game and one team wins, and you're going to be under 500 sometimes. Like, I don't blame Doug, but I'm definitely a Howie Roseman belongs in prison immediately person. Like,
yeah, it's a shame, right? Because I think that 2017-2018 season was so magical and so amazing, and he just hit the nail right on the head with every move he made that year. And that was, he had gone through the Chip Kelly era. He was sent to the inventory closet. That's like the, whatever they say, he was inventory manager or whatever. But he comes out, he's firing, he's dedicated. And I don't know if maybe, I also think there's something called doing too much. When the people say, you're doing too much, I think he was trying to do too much. And I think that that's kind of what we saw last year. Like even, and again, I don't want to harp on this because clearly this ship has sailed, but taking Jalen in the second round, when Carson needed so many tools at his disposal, it's, I think he kind of was trying to outsmart everybody, but also trying to outsmart himself, which doesn't exist. There's a reason that simplicity, is best. And the model's what? The Patriots, right? That's who every football team aspires to be. You got to kind of follow their model. If they're the gold standard, why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? And I think that's kind of what happened with the Eagles last year. So I'm hoping they just, back to football basics this year, just, and let the guys play,
Yeah. I think it would be very cool to like have Howie's job. Like it's got to be kind of fun wheeling and dealing. But the only reason why the other team accepts that trade is that they think they're getting the better end of the deal. Like both sides think that, but you're not going to be right all the time. And you're just rolling the dice that much more by just making deal. And yeah, that resonates about probably trying to do too much.
Well, that, and also making on-field decisions based off of contract decisions, right? I just think about Travis Fulgham. Alshon, of course, he was the number one receiver, but at the same time, he was just coming off of injury. You have this kid in there who's hot, and next thing you know, MIA. He was sixth in receiving yards after I forget how many games, but for somebody to just kind of come into the league like that and make that kind of impact, you gotta strike while the iron's hot, not take him out and sit him on the bench because you paid this guy so much money and you don't want to look bad.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, every single one of them would tell you how important it is to have the rapport between that quarterback and their receivers. And like, not only did he not have that with Alshon because Alshon had been out forever, but also like, just in the back of his mind also, this is the guy that's like planting stories about him all the time. Like they couldn't possibly have less rapport. Like,
yeah, why? It's strange. It's just so strange to me how that all played out. And yeah, the rapport's got to be there. And also kind of like the respect for the quarterback, regardless of And they just paid him. It'll never make sense to me. They just paid him. It'll never. It'll be like it's like the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah,
and after like the Sphinx and the pyramids.
Like part of his value is like the year before he carried practice squad guys into the playoffs. So it's not like he's never done this or freaks out about somebody like Fulgham. Like he was locked in.
Yeah, it's so strange. I mean, they know. I hope Howie knows. I've offered to talk to him multiple times. Howie, you watching? Love to just sit down and chat. I feel like he probably like hates me because I'm really hard on him, but it's only because I care. You know, I'm like a mom. So I would love to sit down with him and just be like, look, just like stick to the basics, put the position players in the positions where they're going to succeed. And if somebody's hot, let them be hot. You know, it's kind of just like, let's get back to the basics here. You're trying to do too much. Last year was god awful. Yeah. So we can only go up from here, I suppose.
Yeah, we would love to host the live stream between you and Howie. I think.
Yes. Howie, Speedify, me and you.
Yeah.
Mano y mano.
So that question I wanted to ask again, but so what are you most excited about with your career and what's happening with you right now?
So I'm really excited about, you know, kind of the creative freedom that I have right now and being able to kind of talk about things in the way that I want to talk about them. And also I'm going to be doing like a lot of fun lifestyle pieces. And I was just over at the Parks racetrack. So kind of going to be getting my hands into stuff that like I've never really done before, right? My entire career, like I said, it's been Philadelphia sports talk radio essentially since I was 19 years old. That's a long time. I'm only 32. So think about that. That's a long time. So just the variety that I'm going to have and the autonomy and really working with these two really creative, visionary guys, Matt Cullen and Gil Bushkin, who brought me in here at Parks, who are like-minded with me in the thinking that, you know, we can kind of create something great here and just be for everyone, right? That's what I'm excited about, is kind of hoping that I can get people to watch my stuff and watch my content because they feel like they want to and they can, you know, and because they want to see what I'm up to. And, you know, if I'm at the PA Derby in September, you know, kind of talking to horses, like who doesn't want to see that? No, I'm excited to really just sink my teeth into something different. And again, have a lot of creative control with what I'm doing.
Yeah. And kind of on that point, what tools that are new that are out there are you most excited to use that weren't really a part of the day-to-day in radio?
I mean, all of this stuff, you know, like stuff like Speedify and really just kind of being able to utilize the internet and all of the tools for the online space. Right. Again, because that's where everybody lives now, whether they like it or not. You know, you're addicted to your phone. Well, it's kind of just where the world is right now. Yeah. So really just being able to utilize social media and tools like this to create compelling and entertaining, right? At the end of the day, that's all I'm trying to do is entertain people and, you know, make them feel good about whatever it is, whether it's horse racing or whether it's the Eagles or whatever it may be. So I think that, yeah, that's what's exciting about this. You know, radio is radio, and it's been radio since, you know, Marconi, the guy, I think he was like the inventor of it, right? So radio is a beautiful thing, and I learned so much there. And it's, you know, radio's theater of the mind. So you have to push yourself to learn how to describe things and to paint pictures for people where they can't see it. Mm-hmm. So that's the beauty of radio. And you really have to be a skilled conversationalist and an entertainer to be really good at it, which just speaks to how Mike Missinelli is so successful, right? It's because he's really, really good at what he does. A lot of people think that they could sit down and talk about sports for 4 hours, but you know, there was a time where we did an entire show, I think, on baseball nets because there was nothing going on. So it forces you to really learn how to communicate with people. So kind of taking those skills and then and then implementing them in the digital space for where I can entertain people is like, that's what I'm most excited about.
Awesome. Well, to kind of wrap up a little bit, I mean, we've loved doing this and would love to have you on again. And
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Natalie's at for her handle has been on the screen the whole time. It's Natalie Egenolf, and we're at Speedify on anything you can think of. And there's a coupon again up in the front corner. So the code is streaming 2021, and that'll get you a discount on our product. And we've also been using Melon for this live stream, which has been a fantastic tool and doesn't require any downloading or picking up any apps. So again, thank you so much. And we'd love to do this again. It's been really
Thanks,
great.
guys. Yeah, this was fun. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.